Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Grow up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
We grew up Baptist. Sunday mornings in the pews, in the sanctuary gym, Wednesday night youth groups, vacation Bible school in the summer, mission trips. That rhythm was just life. But somewhere along the way, I started realizing the church didn't really align with the faith that I believed in. Instead of community, it felt like performance. Instead of grace, it was judgment. This episode isn't about bashing Christians. It's about asking whether the church we see today really looks like the one it was meant to be.
So for me, church was where I grew up. Literally, I was all in. In fact, my first official outside of school graphic design project ever was some t-shirts for our youth group. I coached kids' Christian basketball teams. I sang in the choir. Most of my friends were from our church, and I thought we had this really strong, supportive community. Honestly, I was a little sheltered. Maybe even naively, intentionally blind to some of the more harsh realities of teenage life that were happening around me. But looking back now, I realize it wasn't really a community that lasted. It was more of a facade. And that's where my disappointment sets in. For me, church was supposed to mean love, grace, and belonging, like Jesus taught, right? But over time, it felt more like judgment and exclusion and even lies. I didn't lose my faith per se. I chose to walk away from an institution that didn't seem to practice what it preached. And I think a lot of people in my generation are wrestling with that same kind of disconnect.
As hard as that is to hear, I grew up in the Baptist church too. I left it in my young adult life after numerous disappointments. I went back as a young mom, raising our kids in the church because there was a sense of belonging, a community where I wanted them to have. For a bit, we did belong. We just weren't sitting in the pews we were serving. As a deacon family, teaching Sunday school, helping people get baptized, pastor search committee, that meant I got to see the full spectrum, the good and the bad from the inside. There's community, a mutual philosophy, support in hard times, watching your kids grow into solid people with value and heart. But I also saw rules and ideology and narrow definitions, not the love spoken about in the Bible. And from the outside, I've watched the church drift from love and service into legalism and now politics. That's part of what has caused people like me, once the faithful, to step away. Did the church stop being the place of love and acceptance? Did it change? Or did I just start seeing it differently? The cracks, the failures, the untruths. Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom.
I'm Callie.
I'm Cole.
And I'm Mom.
So, Mama, I have a question for you here. You talk about being raised Baptist and then stepping away as a young adult. At that point, before you're two millennials, what made you step away?
It's the same thing that y'all talk about. It was a recognition that the church was unacceptable or unacceptable of different people. You know, I'd meet somebody who was just a fascinating individual, but they didn't fit the definition of what a Christian was, or they weren't accepted. I mean, growing up, I remember having one divorced person in our church, a female who had really struggled. And I think that struggle was part of what made her acceptable. It's like she'd been punished enough that she could be a part of the crowd now. And it just didn't fit. I mean, there were so many, I don't really want to call them rules, but there were so many definitions of what was acceptable at church, who could be there and who wasn't really welcomed. When you're reading the Bible, everybody's supposed to be welcomed. And if you look at Jesus and what he did, he kind of went to the people who weren't welcome. And those were the ones that he associated with and cared about and spoke to more often than the faithful Pharisees. And it just got old.
When you did go back with us as kids after kind of leaving that first time, did you have reason to believe that it had changed? Were you hoping that it had changed and it was different?
That's a funny question. And the answer is no, because I think, we were close friends with somebody who was highly associated with the church. But there was a comfort there that I still find today. There was a comfort there. This comes down to a song, Callie. When you were a baby, the only song, if you needed a song sang to you, the song that I sang to you was Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Nice.
Don't ask me why, but that was your
It's what worked.
lullaby that you got from me was Battle Hymn of the Republic. But that friend sang all of those Bible school songs, Jesus Loves Me, This Little Light of Mine, sang those to you. And there was such a comfort in that we went back, that I went back. And I tried everything in my power not to go back to a Baptist church and didn't for years. I mean, that was my specific, cannot go to a Baptist. And the truth is, I don't think it's unique to Baptists. I think they just get a really bad rap, sometimes deservedly, but they're not really unique. And I will say to you, it's still the music that is the comfort and that I miss the most.
I think I miss the consistency of the people. You
What do you
knew
mean?
you knew who you were going to see on Wednesday nights, and you knew who you were going to see on Sunday morning, and you could ask them about that thing that happened last week that you haven't seen them since last week, and the consistency of having a kind of built-in community that it was just there.
Yeah.
Is what I miss.
I miss that community. I miss knowing, this is probably worse too. One of the other things that really got us involved in the church that you guys grew up in, I had a friend who lost a baby. The baby died. I don't remember how old. It wasn't just a newborn, but lost a baby. And the way that church, when I went to that service, the way the church handled that family in their grief, I wanted to have people there that would support us in grief. And I'd been through so much grief anyway. I mean, losing my mom, was still pretty fresh to me. And so having somebody there that would love you and bring you a meal through that grief, I wanted a community that would do that.
Yeah, somebody to sit with you.
And we still have friends from that community. Not all of them, but we still have some friends from that community.
Let's talk about the early church. What do you guys think that was supposed to be? What did it represent? I mean, I think based on everything that we've talked about just now, I think we can certainly talk about community, having that built-in community,
And
fairly
you mean the early
like-minded people.
of the King James Bible.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the early church of 1980. I'm talking about what it was originally intended when the church was developed and built.
So it came at a time when it wasn't acceptable. And so, you had to almost be secretive in some ways about it. It was I think in some ways that early church was the unacceptables were acceptable and they were joining in. It's that part that I talked about, people to support you during grief or to stand with you against, in a unified way. It was sharing a meal together or sharing what you had together because they didn't have very much. And so sharing what they had together. And I think it built from that to supporting the widows and the orphans. And I think it developed into an ideology. I don't see it. This is going to sound strange, but I don't see that early church much different than I see democracy with the founding fathers. It was an idea that was built on
The shared
and
ideology.
with shared ideology in response to something that didn't feel good and didn't,
Some kind of persecution.
the persecution part.
Go ahead.
So this question makes me think of a very specific verse, Ecclesiastes 4:12. The one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of three strands is not quickly broken.
That's the community.
Yeah.
We're here to work with and for each other.
And I think that requires a give and a take. I have more than you, and I have more than I need. I'm going to share some of this with you.
And I think it's the lack of judgment or the absence of judgment, not to say, I mean, and I use this all the time, but not to say, well, you have red hair, I don't want you to be a part of my crowd. You're too tall, you're too short, you're too round. I don't want you. That three strands is kind of a quality that's understood there.
Yeah, and it's more even than our diversity makes us stronger. It's, I know how to do this. Let me teach you how to do it too, so that we can both do it together to make the work easier.
Yeah. Many hands make light work. And of all of those kind of pieces, we'll call them, do you guys feel that the church of today is still made up of those same pieces?
Very few.
Agree. I would say that it's very few.
I'm not
I
going to
would
say that
say-
there aren't any out there, but I think they're few, and I think it's really hard to find a congregation that supports that.
I
that
think you're
lives
right. I think that there is a ton of judgment that is passed now. I think that you still kind of have that built-in community, but I think it looks different, and the requirements in order to be able to gain entrance are totally different.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's one thing if you want to stand by the Bible and say the Bible says this, but, we had things about, well, you can't smoke. If you're going to be a deacon, then you can't smoke, or you can't have a drink, not even one ever. You can't do that. And that's not found biblically. So I think the church started making up their own criteria instead of staying with that biblical message of love your neighbor.
Do you think that was intended to be a weeding out process? We only want the best of the best. So we're not going to take anybody who has had a drink, or who has been divorced, or who feels like or is gay.
I don't think it was a weeding out. I think it might be a natural phenomenon of being human, that you want people like you to be with you and surround you. And so I think we just got on the wrong track and forgot what the message was. I think that's one of the things that the young Democrat Representative Tallarica, thank you. I think that's one of the things that has brought me into his orb, kind of, is because that's the message that he is going with. And I think we put so much requirement on. I don't really think it's a weeding out, though. I just think we forgot the message.
I think that message has been muddied.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why? I mean, is it just people being people?
I think it's the human condition. There has to be some form of competition. There has to be a hierarchy.
Friction.
There has to be a ranking.
Which is why in my brain it kind of translates to a weeding out. We only want the best of the best. We only want the most Christians. We don't want anybody who is struggling or having a hard time to take our GPA down.
I just have to
I guess
say,
my question
go ahead.
my question for that would be why? Why are you trying to weed certain people out? Why are you trying to, like, what is your goal in the long run if that's what you're trying to do?
Optics.
That
But here's
seems
the
kind of
thing.
silly.
If
Mhm.
you have the best Christians in your church, you've not left any room for the people who need the church.
Agreed. Totally agree. And also on top of that, you as a Christian, even the best of the best Christians have had to exercise judgment to decide who's who, which if you want to talk about the Bible
Antithetical.
is not our job. So I think that this was really interesting. The original church, at least the church that we think of now, came from England as the Catholic Church headed by the Pope. Then Henry VIII wanted a divorce. A very godly reaction, couldn't get it from the Pope, and decided that he was going to start his own church, the Church of England. And he mandated it. It was a mandate. This is what we're doing. And the break from that mandate brought out all of these other Protestant faiths, which I thought was really fascinating. Okay, you don't share my same ideology, so I'm going to do my own thing over here. You guys come over here now. And that's why, again, I kind of see it as a bit of a weeding out. You agree with Cole. You can go to Cole's church. You can't come to mine. Which, again, I think requires a significant influx of judgment.
Yeah, kind of defeats the purpose.
Defeats the whole purpose. So my question becomes, do you think that it was ever really about being a caring community, or has it always been an institution?
Well, I mean, I think if you want to talk about the original church, not the Church of England, but I'm thinking about the churches started by the apostles, which were just
The followers of
groups
Christ.
just groups of people who were at the time very heavily persecuted and oftentimes having to meet in secret to say, this is what we believe and this is how we're going to do it. That, unfortunately, I think just evolved into the institutions that we're talking about because we're people.
Is it interesting that new religions come about because of conflict with the old one? Say you have the Church of England being formed because the Pope won't support the divorce, and you have the new colonies because the Church of England mandated how you were going to be a part of the Church of England, and every group after that is some form of disappointment or disillusionment
Rejection of that idea.
Splinter.
of the previous one.
Yeah, I mean, and I
Splinter's a
think
good
it
word.
started before that even because, I mean, at one point you had like 3 or 4 different popes because different groups of Catholics decided that they were going to follow. One was from Spain, one was from France, one was from Italy. Well, the real pope has to be Italian because the church is Roman, but these people over here on this side know this guy is more relatable to us, so he's going to be our pope. I mean, and that went on for centuries.
But again, I think that there was such a hefty dose of judgment that is required from all of those different parties. You're
Yeah.
Christian enough to be in mine, so you can come over here. You're Catholic enough to be, you're not Catholic enough to be in mine, so you go over there. You believe this, so we're not letting you in.
Well, are you Eastern or Western Catholic?
Right,
Orthodox or unorthodox.
right.
I know growing up, my best friend was Catholic, and her mom was not impressed with the fact that I was Baptist. And
Troublemaker.
I mean, it kind of was, and of course, I didn't know what the difference was and didn't care. Not at that point, but
The innocence of children.
yeah, didn't understand why she didn't immediately. All the parents used to like me, but she didn't very well. I kind of felt like a hoodlum.
Yeah. But again, that's based on nothing but judgment, right?
That's why
Yeah.
they're called Protestant religions.
Yeah. You have a
Literally.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. So I want to kind of get into the nitty gritty of judgment versus grace. I think especially today are there's a lot of discussion and debate on how Christianity specifically is weaponized or used to make your argument greater, I guess.
Sure.
No
I mean,
offense, but
it comes down from there was a point in time that women weren't supposed to speak in church. It was only supposed to be the wise men who could speak in church, which is not a reflection biblically at all, because some of Jesus's greatest supporters were female. I mean, there were judges in the Jewish nation that were female. There were great business women who were female. So you kind of think, how did we get to that? But it's the same thing. Can you be a gay and be in this church? Can you be goth and be in that church? Can you be divorced? Black?
well, I think that as all of those different versions of churches and versions of ideology have come into fruition, scripture truly has been twisted to cover whatever it is that they think is right.
Yeah, how many different translations of the Bible do we have?
Well, and
Dozens.
if you do very much research on it, it's almost like you know, there is a saying that I grew up with that the Bible is infallible. It is, God's word and is infallible. And yet you find things even within the Bible that contradict each other. So how does that become infallible?
You guys know that game we play, Telestrations, that's like drawing telephone? I feel like the translations that you experience in that game from one to the next can certainly be applied here. I'm even just in a standard game of telephone, right? So
Yeah.
the original intention and the original text has again been translated by whatever bias it was that whoever did that translation
With bias.
with bias into what I think it should be and what I want out of it and what I consider to be important.
I mean, the King James Version was developed for that bias specifically. So again, you go back and go, now, how is that infallible?
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
I would think that some would make the argument that regardless of manipulation, regardless of mistakes made in translation, that God's will would supersede all of that. And he would use that, is how I would say that they would probably argue against you.
Now you want to get into God's will and the interpretation of God's will. Then you bring in
I'm not the one making this argument. I would very much like to clarify. I am.
Then you get into, are we supposed to pray for prosperity? I mean, there's a whole Protestant sect on that about prosperity churches. If you're doing what God wants you to do, then you naturally are going to become wealthy.
Well, I would tell you that biblically that would be inaccurate.
But I mean, you're
if I
going back.
recall, it is the plight and purpose of the Christian to struggle.
And yet we're talking about the bias of the translations of that Bible. So there are other places that you can find prosperity in there. Isn't Proverbs 28 about the woman who, takes care of her family and wears, is it purple? The garments of, I mean, the truth of it is that it's pretty easy to interpret the Bible the way you want to read it. And therefore you get back to judgment.
Well, and again, I think that this is a brain problem, a human problem. We're then taking Callie's interpretation. Callie is taking Callie's interpretation and weaponizing it against Cole, even though Cole could read the same passage and interpret it totally differently than I did. And so that's kind of where all of that gets off track for me. There is no standard. if, we talked earlier about my truth makes it the truth. And I don't think that works.
And I think if you take that judgment away and you look to see what kind of community could be built without that judgment, would it be that bad?
You'd have to be open to it. And I think you would have to let some of your fears dissipate and not lead you,
Yeah.
right? I mean, how would it feel or look for a deacon man in the church, an upstanding citizen, to accept a gay man? Well, that makes him gay now. Like, no, it
Yeah.
doesn't. We can accept you as a person without dissecting your specific lifestyle, and I think that you, especially if the Bible is kind of your basis of all of this, you've got Jesus sitting there with all kinds of different people, with the horrible tax collectors and prostitutes and lepers and all of these other types of people that
The woman at the well who'd been married multiple times.
yeah. And all he showed was grace. And he used those opportunities to teach us lessons, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the church today who is very opposed to opening the door to those same kinds of people. Can you imagine the jaws that would have dropped if a obvious prostitute walked in on Sunday morning? What are we going to do? We can't have that.
I mean, I've seen a couple of 16-year-old girls who were considered that, the reaction that the church had to them, who weren't doing anything, by the way.
Yeah.
But it only takes a couple of people to
start that narrative.
Start the narrative.
Yeah. I mean, but the amount of judgment that is passed, because I don't know about you, Mom, but I was never a 16-year-old girl. I mean, the amount of judgment that is passed on somebody who, especially somebody who is still growing mentally, God forbid we give her a little bit of grace.
Screw up somewhere and you're out.
Yep.
Make a mistake. Because, we're the rest of us are also perfect.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's a saying that I hear said, I don't know how much it is practiced though, hate the sin and not the sinner.
yeah, heard it all my life.
But how does
But how
that
much
work
is that applied?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, you've got it kind of paired with don't hate the player, hate the game. And I think that that's kind of the secular version of the same thing, right?
But
But
even
it's a constant reminder that everybody needs.
even with that hate the sin and not the sinner, then you have to decide it's a sin. And is that really my job?
Your job, yeah.
And how do I do that across the board? I mean,
I think again that there is an argument to be made that some things are quite clearly a sin, if you will.
stealing, lying, adultery.
Coveting.
Yeah. Murder, idolatry.
But
So-
you say coveting and idolatry, but those are pretty. I like my shoes. Is that idolatry?
Do you worship your shoes?
Right.
I got a pair of red ones I'm pretty fond of.
But
Then I don't think that's idolatry.
being fond of something and worshiping it are two different things. Do you have a shrine to those shoes? Do you make sacrifices or offerings to those shoes? Or do you just think that they look nice so you wear them?
I mean, I like my shoes and they do have a special place in the closet. But that's what I'm saying. Who gets to decide what that is?
I just don't think that's our job.
Is that making too much money? Is that putting your kid first? It's a judgment call. So I can go with you on murder.
Can you? What if I'm defending myself and I kill someone? Is that murder? Who gets to decide? I get what you're saying.
But you're right.
There's exceptions to every rule. There has to be.
So maybe there aren't things that, are finite.
I think that that's kind of it. Like the whole purpose of the Bible specifically, if that's your foundation for all of this, to love your neighbor, It doesn't say love your neighbor only if they are X, Y, and Z. Love your neighbor only when they do this, that, or the other. Love your neighbor only if they fit this mold. It
Or
just says
don't love your neighbor if they do X.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to me.
It's crazy. And I mean, the truth is the church has done some pretty crappy things throughout history. There's been a lot of persecution there.
Can you name a group that hasn't done shitty stuff in history?
No.
Yeah.
All in the name of,
Because we're humans.
God or Jesus.
God
No.
or Jesus or safety or betterment or prosperity. I mean, like, there are all
Yeah.
kinds of different reasons why all of these things happen.
I mean, the longest running battle is between Muhammad and Jesus, right? We've been fighting that battle.
I would say that of the Abrahamic religions, the longest running battle is probably Judaism. Yeah, Islam against Christianity is not far behind.
But you even say that. But you used Judaism and Christianity almost in the same sentence, and they're different. They have to be. Now, there are some Jewish Christians.
Yeah, Messianic Judaism is a thing, yes, but Judaism is older than Christianity.
Yes, I agree with you. But we almost sometimes forget that was where it began.
But even then, even if we forget, if the whole purpose is to love your neighbor, why is there a rivalry?
Yeah.
Well, because the messages that we get and receive are different. I mean, you could talk about Mormonism as a form of Christianity, but Mormonism is pretty wildly different than being a Baptist.
You're right, but it's still not our job to judge each other. So why does that take up any space?
So much space.
Yeah, if that's what
Competition for
works for you,
resources.
I mean,
It's the human condition.
humans suck.
We're not any different than lions or deer or wolves or sheep.
I don't know. As far as I know, I've never been a lion or a deer or a wolf or a sheep.
I get what he's saying, though.
I mean, I get what he's saying, but I just think that
Just another animal with a little bit more opposable thumbs.
Yeah, is it a sin for the lion to kill and eat the lamb?
is it my job to worry about it?
That's
I mean,
kind of what I'm
that's
saying.
nature of the beast. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of things in there. I mean, it's the judgment. You mentioned fear, Callie, and I think that has a lot to do with some history. And we're just notorious about wanting people to believe the same thing that we believe. As we sit here and talk about this sounds very partisan. And
Yeah.
you think this fits. Like you say, this is the nature of the beast.
Well, because I think that in many ways, the church, now we've all three done it, the church has morphed into kind of a bestower of politics. And I think that
it's
it's
an institution
possible.
of man. It's an institution of man that wasn't intended to be.
I agree.
But for some reason, we set it on a pedestal and said, this is different. And we're going to treat it differently. And we're
That's
going
just because it's ours. The next guy in the next religion does the same thing. It's just because it's ours.
So has the church idolized itself, and that is the mistake?
Yes.
Ooh.
I think that's a great, great point. Yes, I think that's exactly what has happened.
Yeah.
I think we have, especially in this country, we have made concessions for the church and given them all of the opportunity to idolize themselves and make bad choices.
I don't even know if I would say that they were bad choices. They were choices that were made in self-interest.
I say selfish
And
choices.
so I would say theologically, they have missed the mark.
I can go there with you.
Yeah.
According to a sermon that I remember quite vividly, is the definition of sin.
Yep.
What would it take for either one of you to go back to church? Do you want to? Do you see any need?
I do not.
I would like to find that community that just loved you.
I think you can do that.
I think you can
Because
do
here's
that
the thing.
outside of the church. I think we have the resources and the opportunity, especially with the internet, to find people of a like
community.
mind, to find and build your own community outside of the church.
Well, and biblically speaking, that is the church, any group of 3 or more. Like, it doesn't take the building.
Right.
It doesn't take the songs. It doesn't take the sermons. That's not what makes the church. That's not what makes a church.
Fascinating listening to you two talk about that.
Well, let's transition a little bit into the rise of Christian nationalism. I think
Okay.
that
Here's my definition of what I think Christian nationalism is. I think that it is a church that has decided that they're going to market patriotism, and that patriotism often ignores the love your neighbor part. Would y'all agree with that?
Yeah.
However, I think that there is a group of people who have been involved in the church that have been swept along in this, and they don't even know that they've been swept along. And all of a sudden, I have this feeling that they're going to wake up and go, wait, because
Yeah.
it's not that patriotism is bad, but Callie, you can market things to make them look a certain way.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's what
Yeah.
we're doing here. And I think that there is a crowd of people, like I said, who've been swept up in this, who would be proud to say, yes, I'm a Christian nationalist, but don't
really know
understand
what
what
that means.
that might mean.
Well, kind of like we've been talking about, though, is it up to us to pass that judgment, to say their version of Christian nationalism is right or wrong?
I think the only time that you can make that judgment is if they've left off the part about loving your neighbor. I can make any kind of church I want to have, like we just talked about. 3 or more gathered, I can make that church, that can be, hey, we all love peach cobbler. This is my peach cobbler church.
I still think that's falling into the same trap
of judgment.
Yeah. Not to say that their version of it is right, but I think to say your version of it is wrong is falling into the same trap.
Yeah. Because the Church of the Apple Pie people, they believe in that way more than they believe in the peach cobbler. What makes them wrong? What makes them any less than you?
So that means you don't define the church as love.
Well, and that's kind of what I think truly is the linchpin in Christian nationalism, is it's a fusion of both the American patriotic identity with Christianity, and the interpretation of those combined, and them being greater than anyone else, than someone else, more
Yeah.
important. And by the time that, and I think that truly is what Mom, I 100% agree with you. There are Christians that have gotten swept into the Christian nationalism boat, some knowingly, some not so much. But the moment that we say, hey, we're all this, and we want everyone to recognize and own up to that we are the greatest ideology, that our ideology is better than anyone else's, I think is when all of that kind of goes to shit. Because then all of a sudden, as a Christian nationalist, I can only vote for other people who have the same ideology as me. And then when we vote for those people and they gain power, then that power is exercised to further that same mission, right? And so then rules and regulations and laws are being put into place that don't necessarily take into consider the majority, the needs, or the people, but my better ideology than everybody else's.
Yeah.
that mine is superior in this way.
I can go there.
And I think that that's what we're seeing right now with this rise in Christian nationalism, a battle of control, because my religion is more important than somebody else's, because this nation was founded on my interpretation of Christianity.
Which is kind of a misleading thing anyway, since many of the founders were not Christian.
Yeah.
Yes.
To
I
take
read
a step
some-
back here, it is concerning to me that I see the use of Christian nationalism becoming almost a form of slur, a derogatory term in some cases, because I don't think it has to be. Are there certainly some groups of people under that umbrella that I don't agree with and I think are wrong? Sure, many. Do I think many of them are incorrectly or unjustifiably self-righteous? Sure. But I also think that there are probably some people who consider themselves Christian nationalists who really do walk the walk and try and lead with love. And are they
Patriotic
perfect
Christians.
and do it all of the time? Of course not.
Yeah.
But they're constantly trying, and they're trying to do it the right way, and that's what is asked for.
But I think that that could be said of pretty much any group, right?
Which is why I think using it in that derogatory sense is
Dangerous in and of itself.
a dangerous convenience, if you will.
What's the alternative?
Not using it derogatorily.
Yeah. I mean, we throw around a lot of names for everybody. You're a Christian nationalist, you're a fascist, you're a socialist, you're a communist.
You're a Democrat.
We do, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican. We do a ton of name calling on both sides. We categorize everyone as something, an opponent or not, which, I mean, biblically speaking, is not what we should be doing, not the goal or the intention, particularly if you focus on the New Testament. That's not very love your neighbor. And it's not love your neighbor only if they love you. It's just love your neighbor. I think we're all guilty of that sometimes.
Of course. I totally agree. Do you think that Christian nationalism as an ideology is rooted in love your neighbor?
I don't think you can generalize it that easily, personally. I think for some people, yes. I think for a lot of people, no.
So I think it's like with many things, we can use it to bludgeon people. We can use it to hide behind our own agenda because it's an acceptable term.
But I
mean, the
still
truth-
think it's falling into the same trap.
Yeah. I see what you're going. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a patriotic Christian.
Agreed.
I
I
think
think
it's
using your status as a patriotic Christian to oppress or persecute other people is wrong.
yes,
Yes.
any status that you do that to persecute. I mean, if you look at Israel and you want to decide that Israel is committing genocide, that's wrong. I mean, and you can say that that's
Debatable.
well, that and that it's Jewish and therefore it's acceptable, but it's. I mean, you can call someone a Zionist or an anti-Zionist or those terms are all there. But Cole, it's like you say, if you take away the love your neighbor part, it's just another way to persecute somebody.
I guess maybe I have it wrong. Maybe I have it wrong. But to me, Christian nationalism is rooted less in love your neighbor and more in reclaiming the perception of a Christian foundation for this country.
I can see where you would get that. I don't think it's universal. I think
That's
we
where I'm
definitely
at. Like I
see some
don't
parts of
disagree
that.
with you.
Yeah,
I definitely think
there are
that is a thing, but I think lumping everyone who identifies as a Christian nationalist into that category also isn't exactly fair.
I wonder today if you can just be a Christian in America or if you must be a Christian nationalist.
For sure, you can be one or the other.
You think? Or do you think
I
that
do.
there's so much momentum for Christian nationalism and that flow that you can stop and say, wait, I don't want to be identified here?
I think I see it all the time.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I do. I mean, sitting out on the internet and something will be said, and you have immediately a bunch of people who are like, this is not the Bible that I believe in. This is
Yeah.
not the religion that I adhere to. I am a devout Christian, and this is not something that I can get behind. So I think that there are definitely two different groups. Do I think that some people from the Christian camp have been swept away into Christian nationalism? Yes. Do I think that every one of them knows it? No. Do I think that some of them know it and are accepting of it and pushing for that? Yes. Do I think some of them have chosen that life? Also, yes. And so I'm not sitting here by any stretch saying every Christian nationalism person is bad. But I think in general, the concept of Christian nationalism is wrong because it forces, hear me out, because it forces the ideology that is built on the perception of this nation being built on my views as this kind of person. I have to apply my views for everybody else. And that's where I think Christian nationalism is really scary. And I think that you see that, you guys. We've talked about the Lost Boys, and Mom, you have put all kinds of different research that Gen Z men are flocking to churches. It gives them structure. It gives them all kinds of validations and power structures. And it's also a great place for them to meet obedient women, biblical women. That scares me. That isn't teaching them how to fail and how to be good humans. That isn't teaching them love thy neighbor. That's teaching them that Christians in this nation are the standard, and that needs to be pushed on everybody else around them. And the only place that you can go, this is again what it's teaching them, the only place that you can go to have an obedient woman, that's even a need, not just a desire, but a need. But the only place that you can go to get them is within our walls. There are no obedient women that exist outside of Christian nationalism. That's teaching them scary things to me. That's teaching them hierarchy based on subjective views.
I'm trying to figure out what is different from when I went back to the church because I wanted my children to have a basis, and these young men going back to church because they want a community that accepts them and they're feeling unaccepted in general.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with wanting to feel accepted. I don't. I think that it's wrong that once you find that acceptance, that you push it on other people. That's the brainwashing element of it to me that infuriates me. The only way that you could have gotten here, the only way that you could have been successful is by doing it this method that we just showed you. And everybody else around you has to do the same thing if they want to be successful.
The only way you can stay.
And the only way you can stay. I think that's wrong.
I don't disagree.
That's not just Christian nationalism.
I agree.
Every group.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is, once again, the human condition.
Nature.
Yeah.
I just think that there's a concentration of that push in the Christian nationalism bucket right now that is more prominent than some others. And those make waves.
And I think
all
you're
of the rest of us are
seeing,
impacted by.
yeah, I think you're seeing, while the young men are flocking, the women are leaving because their acceptance, who they are, is not being accepted. And so it's like this this cycle where the young men are coming in, but the women are leaving because these men are being accepted and these women aren't measuring up enough.
Right.
So they're not really welcome.
And I think that there's a rejection of ideology taking place at the same time. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Just because I'm a Christian woman doesn't make me a trad wife. I want more for myself. Whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. Just because I am not gay doesn't mean that every other gay person is wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think that you can see all of the things that we talked about at the beginning of this with those kind of issues with the church, the hypocrisy, the exclusion. I don't want to say that it's gendered, that only one gender is noticing that and doing something about it, because I don't believe that that's true. But I think that you certainly, again, have a large portion of your congregation who says, I don't want to be part of this. And it just so happens that the way that the scales are tipped right now, the people who are saying, yes, this is good, tend to be more primarily male and young. And the more people who are saying, we're not doing this, tend to be female.
And I think you have to look at that historically and think that historically women have carried so much of the weight in teaching your children and in the home to, what it means to be a Christian. Some of the like suffragettes or prohibitionists who have come out of the church but have had something to stand up to, for the most part, have been women that have pushed that. And now then there seems to be something that is saying, we don't want you anymore. You may have been the backbone, but we don't need you anymore.
Well, and I think that there's research that we have talked about specifically. In general, stereotypically, men operate differently than women. We know this. A man is more likely, like 73% more likely to apply for a job that he is not overly qualified for, that he doesn't meet the qualifications for, than a woman. A woman won't. And I think that same kind of logic here. And there's lots of things. Women are more likely to file for divorce. I am not willing to put up with this. I'm not doing this. I want to do something else with my life than men are. These are like statistics that are current and true today, right? And so I think that you're seeing the same thing being applied here. You've got women who, because we think about it differently, because we see it differently, and because we're willing to make that change, we're doing something about it. Whereas you've got the men who are like, oh, this is going to fix everything. And so now I'm here. And there's nothing wrong with allowing your brain to feel that way. It's just different. I think the contributions, especially when you talk about it based on sex, are different. Mom, you said a second ago, women have been more in charge of the social aspect of family life and children and raising children and teaching children. Men have been more burdened with the financial aspect of it, making sure that all the bills. I just think that if you look at it categorized by male versus female, I mean, the most active volunteers in churches have been women, organizing food and meal trains, organizing various ministries. And I mean, that's because in general, women tend to be more organized. So women are organized people organizing things, mission trips and outreach. And then when they sit there and see that all of those efforts are being used and harnessed to cause harm or cause outcasting, they say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to put in all of this work for you to go and shit on somebody else.
It just says something that their needs are not being met when they've worked so hard historically to support
The needs of others.
the program itself. but they've done that without much recognition. They've done that generally without pay. They've done that generally without acceptance. So I don't know if this is, really a new generation thing. I don't know the answer here, but if the numbers are correct and you have that many women leaving, quote unquote, the church, I think there's some questions that need to be asked there.
Yeah.
Why is that? What do we do? Do we care? And
Yeah.
maybe the answer is you don't care.
I think that would require a level of transparency that most people, no matter who you are, gender, religion, don't really want to answer to.
There is a reporter, I believe she is, that has been reporting on the number of scandals particularly within this region. How many existing long-term pastors of churches have been involved in scandal? And it's kind of scary to look at.
Oh, I'm
And
sure.
so for me, if you look at that and you see that, and then you see a number of young men going and you think, wait a minute, is this the example that we want them to see? Something's not adding up there. But again, it's not adding up from the very beginning. If you're talking about the person that's supposed to be leading the church, and we have a massive amount of scandal involved with that, something's wrong with the picture.
Yeah. With choosing them as the leader, with continuing to follow them.
Yeah, for years.
And I think that lack of accountability to address those things is just one more reason why people leave.
Do you think that's why Christian nationalism disturbs you, is because you don't see any accountability or transparency?
I think that's part of it. I think the part that I find to be most scary is the view of exceptionalism that is kind of required. We are the way. We are the best. We are right and everyone else is wrong. That's the part that scares me the most.
That's been going on for eons, though.
Yeah, isn't every group that way?
Is that a flame we want to fan now?
I don't know that it can be helped.
Yeah. I don't
Okay.
know if it's a fire that can be put out.
Maybe it can't be. But I'm not going to just sit here and stand here while we all get burned.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm going to walk away to somewhere else. And that's not to say that I personally won't start a fire somewhere else.
Started to say, we don't know if that's out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Mm-hmm. But I don't want to choose to stand at the fire and just wait until it engulfs me.
See if it burns you.
Yeah. What do you miss about the church?
I miss the communality. I miss knowing when I walk in the door that I am accepted. And I recognize that that is not universal in many ways. But I did have a community.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I miss that part. I miss the music that I think had a way of taking me to worship or allowing me to worship.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot sit here today and not hear Mercy Me sing
I can only imagine.
I Can Only Imagine, and not feel my heart expand from that. So I miss that part of it. I miss having friends. I think that if I died today, I don't know who would show up to the funeral. And I think that there was a point that I felt like there'd be a whole church full of people, which is vanity on my part. I get that.
Yeah, that question, that sentiment really befuddles me. I don't care. I'm dead.
You did. It's vanity. It's complete and total vanity.
Okay,
In today's world, who even knows if you get to have a funeral? I mean, we're not doing funerals for everybody like we used to do, and we're certainly not doing them the same way. So that may be my age showing there.
Besides the vanity element of that, I think that there's also a conditioning that has taken place that
Explain.
I am that if you were at the church and you had this congregation of people who were going to show up for you, how many of those people were showing up for you versus out of obligation?
You have a point.
So I think that, and I get it. I totally
the
get what you're
optics.
saying. Yeah, I get the optics of it. But at the same time, like, I think that it comes down to a question of what's more important to you, quantity or quality?
That's where I'm at. Because to be perfectly honest with you, like maybe a sense of leadership is, and even then, I struggle to even say that. I don't miss the community of church. I didn't. I didn't feel like that community meant anything. I felt like the community for me was for optics. Like it didn't really matter. Like you can show up and be the best that you can be, and it didn't mean anything.
Do you feel
And
the
so I
same way,
have
Kat?
my own community that I have developed that gives me that. And like, I don't need a ton of friends. What do I need 100 friends for when 10 covers everything that I need?
Do you feel the same way, Cal? Did you have community?
I think I thought I did. And I think I thought I did for a long time, even after I left. But I think what time really put to the test was the quality of that community. I'm not saying I have no bad words to say about anybody that I grew up with in the church, but I also don't speak to any of them. Not a one,
Yeah.
none, zero. And I think for me, I mentioned it in the intro, I think for me, that community was more of a facade. And looking back on it now, it was more because that was the choice that was made for each of us, not the choice that we made necessarily. We're going to church on Wednesday nights because that's what my family does. That's what we do. Not because I'm desperate to go see these people and to strengthen my bonds with them and my relationships with them and worship together or any of that. This is just what we do. And so the moment that that structure was removed and I got to make that choice myself, when I went to college and left, I tried several different churches and I hated every single one of them.
They're really hard to find.
They're really hard to find. And so I think that the hindsight being 2020 part of it truly is that those relationships were convenient.
Was it a mistake to involve you in church when you were younger? Did it give you anything?
I don't think it was a mistake. It's certainly not something that I hold against you or hold you accountable for. Well, she put me in church when I was a kid and I didn't. It's not that. I think that it gave me perspective that I may not have had without it, without the church. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having a better perspective.
At your dad and I, because Dad was never taken to church as a kid. His family wasn't involved, and he wasn't involved in the church until, really, Callie, until you came along.
Mm-hmm.
And he went with me, but it's not because he really wanted to go with me.
Mm-hmm.
But again, historically, women are the ones who make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went. And I think in hindsight, there is a part of him that wonders what his life would have been if his life would have been different, or what would have happened if he'd had that early influence. And while I can see that that influence isn't always positive, there are some really good things. I mean, if you go back to Christian nationalism, there's some very good things about what that stands for, what that's supposed to mean. Being patriotic to your country is definitely not a bad thing. Learning, quote unquote, right from wrong biblically is not a wrong thing. And so I think it's a foundation. I just don't know how long it can last.
I think that that's kind of the make or break to me. So long as it gives you an opportunity to build a foundation of choice for you to make your own choices and your own decisions, and it's not a brainwashing thing, I don't see that there's anything wrong with that. I think that in some instances, forcing your kid to go to church is bad? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I can see that.
This whole pray the gay away thing, I can't follow you there. And if you're bringing your gay kid to church so that he cannot be gay or she cannot be gay anymore, but you're subjecting
You're
them
going
to
to church for
all
the
of
wrong
this,
reason.
then I think you're
You
going to
should be
church for the wrong
bringing your
reason.
kid there so that they can be loved, period.
Right.
Full stop, end of story.
Exactly.
So that kind of brings me up. I read an article recently. Jen Hatmaker just came out with a new book. And I was fascinated by her look, because this is a woman who grew up in the church. Her father was a pastor. She married a pastor. They started a church. I mean, deeply, deeply involved in the church until she took a position that they disagreed with. And then to hear, and I think that's one of the hardest things that I struggle with is, and I've seen, I mean, hers is on a pretty national scale that she got beat up on, but I've seen it happen on a smaller scale of taking, making a decision or accepting an idea that is not acceptable and technically getting bullied because that you did that. And so it was really interesting is it rebellion or is it ostracism? And how she felt about that and how she's come. And it was fascinating. She has stayed in the church, not because she was welcomed in the same church, but let me rephrase that. She has stayed with her belief of who Christ is and what that means, but has had to come to a reckoning of maybe what she learned for all of those years isn't exactly legitimate.
Yeah, so this is kind of how I feel about it. And I think there's kind of two approaches to take here. One, if you're going to a church that can shake your faith, one of two things is going on. Either your faith is not as real as you thought it was, or you're not going to a real church.
Don't know that I agree with you on that.
Can you give an example, Mom, of what would kind of differ from that? You're going to a church and your faith is shaken. What causes that?
Well, it could be a new awareness or an open-mindedness of something. I mean, I can see being within that community and learning something new that changes you.
So I would say that in that instance, your faith isn't as strong as you thought it was. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's growth, right? As long as you're willing to grow, fine. There's nothing
I don't
wrong
know
with
that because I'm sitting here thinking, is your faith growing, your faith being shaken, or just your faith maturing?
Probably both.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things there. When I say if you go to a church and your faith can be shaken, I'm inferring a reduction in your faith or a doubt in your faith. If going to a particular church can make you doubt the faith that you have, then I think either it wasn't really faith to begin with, or you're not going to a real church. It may be a church in name, but I don't feel like as if it's a church in practice in that type of instance. Now, going to church and growing your faith is different, but that's not what I would consider my faith being shaken.
Yeah.
So do
Hey,
we have
guys.
answers?
Do we ever?
I was literally just thinking the same thing. I was like, I feel like us having these conversations only raises more questions than it actually answers. And I'm not mad at that, but still, no, I don't have any answers.
Who's got a weird thought?
I have a weird one that just might shake your faith.
Oh, great.
So when we grew up in the church, a potluck was a routine event, right? I would
Breaking
like to
bread
know.
together.
Right, exactly. Fellowship. I would like to know what church potluck dish you think would start a holy war, even if it's just a small one. I'm thinking chili with or without beans because people are serious.
Only in the South. God. I mean, there's some foods that people will really stand on. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
do you put mustard in your potato salad or not? Sweet pickles
Obviously, yes.
Obviously, yes. But here's my thing. Mom and I, we heard somebody the other day talking about putting raisins in their potato salad. Like, what?
No.
That's
That just
criminal.
sounds nasty to me.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And Mom,
We want to
you had
know if anybody has eaten potato salad with raisins in it.
I don't know if I want to know that.
Put a comment in if you've had potato salad with raisins and it was good. I can't imagine anything with raisins being good.
Mom, you had a note in here about pork and beans.
Well, because I was being funny.
Care to share with the class?
I mean, well, if you're Jewish, you can't have pork. You know, it's an unclean food, so pork and beans would get you in trouble.
What about rump cake?
Well, I'm going to tell you, we had
Shots
an
fired.
open house one time.
Literally.
What did he say?
Shots fired
We
or poured.
had an open house, and one of your cousins has an outstanding rum cake recipe that I dearly love, and I had fixed it, and the person who ate the most of it that day was one of the pastors from our church, and I was terrified that he didn't know what he was eating or that something, and I mean, it cooks off. You know, the alcohol part of that cooks off, but at the
Sure.
same time, you're like,
Some of it does, but I've seen rum cake recipes where they cook it in it, and then they pour rum over it at the end and let it all soak in. And
but that's been
that's
cooked
not
too.
cooked enough. No, that's not being cooked off. That is soaking and eating.
Oh, well, mine that you pour over, you heat it. And so I feel like, but at the same time, I was terrified that
You're
You're
gonna get the
just
pastor
distilling
drunk.
it. You're just making it stronger.
Right. Mom's getting pastors drunk.
And that was my fear. I mean, did he know what he was eating? And was he going to be drunk? And was it going to be my fault? So, yeah.
Did you force it down his throat?
No, but the second or third time he went back for more, I was sweating it.
Oh, gosh. Goodness.
Speaking of cake,
Yes.
it's our
Mom,
good news story this week.
we need a good one.
Okay, this one is pretty sweet, just literally. There is a baker in Charlotte, North Carolina. He is an immigrant from Colombia. And about 25 years ago, when he moved from Colombia, didn't speak very much English, was starting with almost nothing, but he opened a bakery, Manila Bakery. And what he started doing, because he wanted to build community, is he went to a nonprofit and that worked with people who were homeless and said, "Hey, where do you get your birthday cakes?" And they were like, "We don't buy birthday cakes for homeless people." And so he started donating birthday cakes for the homeless. And because most of them or some of them he literally took it to one man and he said, "I've never had a birthday cake before." And so this adorable man donates birthday cakes for the homeless in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I just think, that's taking something that is your talent and using it for good and for community. I think it's a sweet story.
It is. He has officially donated over 300 cakes to people who are experiencing homelessness. And he says that each one of them represents more than flour and frosting. It's an opportunity to share dignity, kindness, and a reminder that everybody deserves to feel like they matter.
And I thought it was so sweet. He doesn't call them homeless. He calls them neighbors.
Yeah. because he's not here to judge them.
Yeah. So, congratulations, Manilo's Bakery, on your 300th birthday cake.
It's awesome.
That's pretty cool. So, what could you donate from what you do that might make a difference to somebody?
Right now, I'm
I mean-
donating graphic design skills.
Yeah. I mean, I could donate food.
Yep.
Pretty easily.
Yep. I'm using my design skills to build our community.
I love it. I love it. I love you guys.
I love y'all.
Love you too.
Interesting conversation today.
Yep. Always is. Thanks, guys.